we start a new book. We're now onto the book of the prophets. First one being Isaiah, chapters 1 to 4. I'm going to do an introduction, which I'm trying to do this year, as you understand a bit of the book, and also its relevance, especially in terms of salvation and the Messiah. The theme of this book is expressed in the meaning of the name Isaiah, Yahweh saves, or Yahweh is Saviour. The book of Isaiah contains more prophecies about the Messiah than any other book in the Old Testament. In fact, the plan of salvation is so comprehensively revealed in Isaiah's work that Augustine called it the fifth gospel, and others have referred to it as the Bible in miniature. Some have attempted to discredit the authenticity of the prophecies of Isaiah by suggesting that Isaiah was not the author of them all. The historical view as to the authorship of this book, however, has consistently held that Isaiah composed the entire book. This view is supported by the fact that each time a portion which the liberals dispute is quoted in the New Testament, Isaiah is named as the author. Traditionally, Isaiah is thought to have been the son of a prince of Judah. He certainly did not feel uncomfortable in the presence of kings. We read in Isaiah chapter 7, verse 3 to 12, and verses 30. Chapter 37, verse 21. And the richness of his vocabulary suggests that he was a man of culture and education. He ministered for over 40 years, 740 to 697 BC, during the reigns of 4 Judah kings, Isaiah chapters 1, verse 1, and those kings being King Uzzah, Jotham, Ahaz, and Hezekiah. While Uzziah and Jotham were in power, there was relative peace and prosperity, but Isaiah's writings, as well as those of the contemporary prophets Hosea, Amos, and Micah, reveal that the people were spiritually destitute. Remember in Hosea, chapters 4, verse 1, 2, 6 to 8, he says, people perish for lack of knowledge. Amos chapters 2, verse 6 to 8, and Micah chapters 1, verses 5, 3, verse 1 to 11 says the same thing. When King Ahaz came to power, Syria besieged Jerusalem. 2 Kings chapter 16, verse 5. Isaiah was given the task of urging him to trust Yahweh for a favorable outcome, but Ahaz called on Assyria for help instead. 1 Kings chapter 16, verse 7. Hezekiah made great strides in bringing about religious reform in the nation and was well acquainted with Isaiah. 2 Kings chapters 18 verses 1 to 7, chapters 19 verses 1 and 2, chapters 20 verses 1 and to 11. It is not known precisely when Isaiah died, but according to tradition, he was sawn in half with a timber saw during the reign of King Manasseh. Hebrews chapters 11 verse 37. So, Book of Isaiah, the Bible in miniature. All the prophecies of Yeshua. And you would not find any prophecies that says he will do away with the law. So as Paul told Timothy, study the scriptures, meaning the Old Testament, and in them you will learn about salvation in the Messiah. Remember, there's no New Testament at that time. So Luke chapters 24-44, Yeshua speaking, and he said unto them, these are the words which I spoke unto you while I was yet with you, that all things must be fulfilled which were written in the law of Moses and in the prophets and in the Psalms concerning me. For those who don't know who Yeshua is, commonly he's referred to as Jesus, but that's another story. So, our study so far, we have read the law of God and Psalms. 2 of the 3 things Yeshua said spoke of him. So far, none have said the law of God will be changed by him or anything would be changed, i.e. that the law would only be for children of Jacob. Remember we read in Exodus chapters 12 verse 49, one law shall be to him that is homeborn and unto the stranger that sojourneth among you. Numbers 15:16, one law and one manner shall be for you and for the stranger that sojourneth with you. Numbers 15:29, you shall have one law for him that sinneth through ignorance, both for him that is born among the children of Israel and for the stranger that sojourneth among you. So it's one law for everybody, Jew and Gentile, as it says in the New Testament. The stranger also got an allocation of land. So there was no, when it came to Promised Land, so there's no difference between them except the one thing, eating the Passover. So in other words, they got an inheritance, and basically they were part of Israel. You can say they were Israelites. They may not have been Hebrews, one of the 12 tribes, but they were Israelites. They followed the same law and they got land. And the only thing they couldn't participate in is Passover unless they were circumcised. So Exodus chapters 12:43. And Yahweh said unto Moses and Aaron, This is an ordinance of the Passover. There shall no stranger eat thereof. Verse 48. And when a stranger shall sojourn with thee, and will keep the Passover to Yahweh, let all his males be circumcised, and then let him come near and keep it. And he shall be as one that is born in the land, for no uncircumcised person shall eat thereof. So we see, once he's circumcised, he's exactly the same as someone who's born in the land. Numbers 9:14. And if a stranger shall sojourn among you, and will keep the Passover unto Yahweh, according to the ordinance of the Passover, and according to the manner thereof, so shall he do. You shall have one ordinance, both for the stranger and for him that was born in the land. So understand, it is crucial you understand that point in order to understand Paul's teaching in the New Testament, or shall I say teachings in the New Testament. That singular difference was the topic of all his epistles, as in Acts chapter 15 verse 2, or Acts chapter 15 basically talks about circumcision, and you can see it says this in verse 2 and verse 6 and verse 21. In 1 Corinthians chapter 7 verse 19, he writes, Circumcision is nothing, and uncircumcision is nothing but the keeping of the commandments of God. That is what we are all, as humans, called to do if we want to be godly or acceptable by God. Now, circumcision is not a law. Circumcision is not a commandment when it says about keeping the commandments of God. Circumcision does not come under that category. It is not a law, but a covenant sign of identification to the seed of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. A straight line is the shortest distance between 2 points. The law of God and Psalms has said the same thing. Joshua chapters 8 verse 34, Psalms 89 verses 30 to 31, Psalms 119 verse 151 and 152. Join those dots together, and we have a straight line from which we can project the rest of the line or teachings of God. All future understanding of the Bible must fall on that line without deviation by 1 degree to the left nor to the right. That is what Messiah meant when he said in Matthew 5:18, For verily I say unto you, till heaven and earth pass, one jot or one tittle shall in no wise pass from the law, till all be fulfilled. As we read the third category, spoken by Messiah, the prophets, I said we've covered the law and we've covered Psalms, we should also see nothing in them state Messiah will fulfill a change in the requirement to keep his Father's laws. It is also what Paul said in Galatians 1 verse 8. God is not the author of confusion, so any teaching or prophecies through his prophets or claimed ones of the New Testament and today must be in line with the straight line already established. 1 Corinthians chapter 14 verse 32. And the spirits of the prophets are subject to the prophets. For God is not the author of confusion. And this teaching, it applies to, and God's way applies to black and white, which is a division that some people are trying to put in. That blacks are Hebrews or Israelites and whites are not. One law for every person. God is not a respecter of colour. In fact, he doesn't even put colour into his thinking. So if you have kept up with the readings so far, have read everyday study, very well done. Stay with us now as we read the prophets. I'm unsure how to adequately cover the chapters in a concise way. God does not waste words, so each word he uses is important. Yet, for economy, I have to cut some out. Sadly, for Facebook posts, I cannot underline nor write in bold certain words to draw attention to them and thus eliminate the need to explain. I think I will try cutting out words or sentences, leaving others, putting some in capitals and comments in brackets that make the point. I urge you to preferably read the whole chapters or at least listen to them, as I may only be able to comment on very few verses superficially. Note the context is always in relation to Israel and not other nations or religious systems. In other words, when we come to the New Testament, we cannot say it's talking about Gentiles. It never talks about Gentiles in the sense of natural Gentiles. It talks about Israel, of whom a certain group of them become Gentiles in the New Testament when they were scattered by the Syrians, the 10 tribes. Okay, Isaiah chapter 1, verse 1. The vision of Isaiah, the son of Amos, which he saw concerning Judah and Jerusalem in the days of Uzziah, Jotham, Ahaz, and Hezekiah, kings of Judah. So notice he's focusing on Judah, or the tribes called Judah, because the other 10 had been scattered. So, the wickedness of Judah. Verse 2. Hear, O heavens, and give ear, O earth, for Yahweh hath spoken. I have nourished and brought up children, and they have rebelled against me. The ox knoweth his owner, and the ass his master's crib, but Israel doth not know. My people doth not consider. Ah, sinful nation, a people laden with iniquity, a seed of evildoers, children that are corrupters. They have forsaken Yahweh, they have provoked the Holy One of Israel unto anger. They are gone away backwards. Verse 7. Your country is desolate. Your cities are burned with fire. Your land, strangers devour it in your presence, and it is desolate as overthrown by strangers. Verse 9. Except Yahweh of hosts had left unto us a very small remnant, we should have been as Sodom and Gomorrah. And others totally gone, totally destroyed. Verse 10. Hear the word of Yahweh, you rulers of Sodom. Give ear unto the law of our God, ye people of Gomorrah. To what purpose is the multitude of your sacrifice unto me? I delight not in the blood of bullocks, or of lambs, or of he-goats. Verse 12. When you come to appear before me, who have required that at your hand, and to tread my courts? For example, i.e., at the wrong days and times rather than those appointed by God in Leviticus chapter 23. People are doing their own sacrifices at their own times. Verse 13. Bring no more vain oblations. Incense is an abomination unto me. The new moons and Sabbaths, the calling of assemblies, I cannot away with. It is iniquity, even the solemn feasts. Here comes the difference. Your new moons and your appointed times, my soul hateth. They are trouble unto me. I am weary to bear them. And when you spread forth your hands, I will hide my eyes from you. Yea, when you make your prayers, I will not hear. Your hands are full of blood. Wash you, make you clean, put away the evil of your doings from before mine eyes. Cease to do evil, learn to do well. So, Sunday people and other Christians use this to say that God hates the feast days and so forth. Note the context of what is being said. The people are doing things at their times in their ways. God says he hates it. He turns his eyes from it. He turns his ears from them. Only when we do things God's ways at God's appointed times does he give us attention. Or is he pleased with them, should I say. So if you want to know when God appoints things to be done, Leviticus chapter 23. Those are his appointed feast day times. Because in Leviticus 23, he makes the difference between talking about their ways and his Moses to tell his people, "Speak unto the children of Israel, and say unto them concerning the feast of Yahweh, which you shall proclaim to be holy convocations. Even these are my feast." So his ones are holy, these are evil. And notice he's told Moses to tell the children of Israel. And as we read earlier on, in one law for everybody, the children of Israel composed of strangers. They were like one born, especially when they also kept circumcision. They became as one born. They became an Israelite. They may not have been a Hebrew, but they became an Israelite. And all these laws of God are for God's people, Israelites, by birth or joining into. Okay, going on to verse 1, verse 18. "Come now, let us reason together, saith Yahweh. Though your sins be as scarlet, they shall be as white as snow. Though they be red like crimson, they shall be as wool." Now notice the wool is a comparison to the colour, red, white colour, not the texture, as some people try to use Daniel and Revelations. Verse 19. "If you be willing and obedient, you shall eat the good of the land. But if you refuse and rebel, you shall be devoured with the sword, for the mouth of Yahweh hath spoken it." So I hope chapter 1 is clear. Moving on to chapter 2. The word that Isaiah the son of Amos saw concerning Judah and Jerusalem. And as I said, note it is not Israel, as they have been scattered and become the lost tribes of Israel, for whom the Messiah would be sent. When he says, "I come from the lost tribe of Israel." Isaiah chapter 2, verse 2. "And it shall come to pass in the last days that the mountains of Yahweh's house shall be established in the top of the mountains, and shall be exalted above the hills, and all nations shall flow unto it. And many people shall go and say, Come, you, and let us go up to the mountain of Yahweh, to the house of God, to the house of the God of Jacob, and he will teach us his ways, and we will walk in his paths. For out of Zion shall go forth the law, and the word of Yahweh from Jerusalem." Verse 4. "And he shall judge among the nations, and plural, and shall rebuke many people, and they shall beat their swords into plowshares, and their spears into pruning hooks. Nation shall not lift up sword against nation, neither shall they learn war any more." Verse 5, "O house of Jacob, come you, and let us walk in the light of Yahweh." So see, all the nations are to learn the law and to follow in the same paths. Proverbs chapter 6:23, "For the commandment is a lamp, and the law is light." Isaiah chapter 2, verse 6, "Therefore thou hast forsaken thy people, the house of Jacob, because they be replenished from the east, and are soothsayers like the Philistines, and they please themselves in the children of strangers." So this is saying, without the law, people become like others, no longer a peculiar people, but like the Philistines, let's say. Chapter 3, "Judgment on Judah and Jerusalem." Verse 1, "For behold, Yahweh, the God of hosts, doth take away from Jerusalem and from Judah the stay and the staff, the whole stay of bread and the whole stay of water." Verse 8, "For Jerusalem is ruined, and Judah is fallen, because their tongue and their doings are against Yahweh, to provoke the eyes of his glory. The show of their countenance doth witness against them, and they declare their sin as Sodom. They hide it not. Woe unto their soul, for they have rewarded evil unto them." yourselves. Say you to the righteous that it shall be well with him, for they shall eat the fruit of their doings. Verse 16. Moreover, Yahweh saith, because the daughters of Zion are haughty, and walk with stretched forth necks, and wanton eyes, walking and mincing as they go, and making a tinkling with their feet, which means they had bracelets on their ankles. Verse 17. Therefore Yahweh will smite with a scab the crown of the head of the daughter of Zion, and Yahweh will discover their secret parts. In that day Yahweh will take away. Verse 21. The rings and nose jewels. So in other words, the daughters of Jerusalem, peculiar holy people, became like the Jezebels, if I can call it that. Same way Christian women in churches today dress like the world, walk like the world, want to have nail varnish and everything like the world, and yet they think they're different when they come to churches. Now, as I said, I've chosen certain words of the verse to emphasize the point God is making. However, read or listen to the whole chapters to get the whole thing for yourself. Last chapter for today, chapter 4, verse 1. In that day 7 women shall take hold of one man, saying, we will eat our own bread and wear our own clothing. Only let us be called by thy name, to take away our reproach. Verse 2. The branch of Yahweh glorified. In that day shall the branch of Yahweh be beautiful and glorious, and the fruit of the earth shall be excellent and comely for them that are escaped of Jerusalem, of Israel. And it shall come to pass that he that is left in Zion, and he that remaineth in Jerusalem, shall be called holy, even everyone that is written among the living in Jerusalem. When Yahweh shall have washed away the filth of the daughters of Zion, and shall have purged the blood of Jerusalem from the midst thereof, by the spirit of judgment, and by the spirit of burning. And Yahweh will create upon every dwelling place of Mount Zion, and upon her assemblies, a cloud and smoke by day, and the shining of the flaming fire by night. For upon all the glory shall be a defence. Verse 6. And there shall be a tabernacle for a shadow in the daytime, for the heat from the heat, and for a place of refuge, and for a covert from storm and from the rain. So those who are left in Jerusalem, the holy ones, God will be a protection for them. Shalom, until tomorrow, happy studying, and please remember what you're reading.